And joining us now here in studio, John Stackhouse, the editor-in-chief with the Globe and Mail. John, welcome back to Upper Canada, as they say.
It's good to see you.
Okay, first and foremost, the journalist in me wants to know, how'd you get this interview with Vladimir Putin?
I'd like to take great credit for getting it, but it was a bit of luck, or a lot of luck. His office wanted to have a newspaper editor from each of the G8 countries come to Moscow to have a private dinner with him.
So they sought you out?
They, for Canada, thought the Globe and Mail would be the best newspaper and invited me. And of course I said yes. It was an extraordinary opportunity.
And the invitation was to go to dinner?
Yes, they were quite clear. Come to his dacha outside Moscow, have dinner, spend a few hours talking with him, listening to him on the eve of an election, which I found extraordinary. There are not many countries where a leader, even one who feels comfortable with his lead, would take a night off campaigning to talk with foreigners.
What language did you speak in?
He spoke in Russian. He understands English. He and I spoke later in English. He also is very fluent in German, but he likes to be heard and seen only speaking Russian before the Russian people, and this was taped and replayed later on national TV.
Was there anything about him, of course we've seen him on TV 1,000 times, is there anything, having spent time with the man, that much time with the man, that you learned about him you didn't know before?
Very focused. Whatever he is thinking about, it seems to be his entire thought process goes to that. Everything you've heard about his eyes are true. These blazing eyes, they felt to me like lasers, ice cold. He's a cold man, and I don't mean that in a mean way. He's just very unemotional. And in fact, when we were talking about some subjects, he warned about being too emotional about them.
For a guy who's been in the public eye a very long time, I have no idea if he's married, if he's got kids. Do you know anything about that?
He's married. He's got 2 grown daughters. There is some discussion in Russia about the state of his marriage, and we asked him about this because
you asked him about that?
Yes, his wife has not been seen publicly for a couple of years. And is no longer photographed, so there's much chatter in Russia about this. He was adamant that she is a private person, does not want to be seen, does not want to be photographed or filmed by the media, and his words were, "Leave her alone."
Okay, one more thing before we start talking about Russian policy, and that is, unlike the other journalists, the other 5, you played hockey with the guy. How did you end up on a hockey rink with Vladimir Putin?
Well, he ended the interview by saying, he checked his watch and stood up and said, I've got to go. I've got a hockey game. I play regularly with some friends. So I innocently said, can I go with you? And to my astonishment, he said yes, and arranged for his aides to keep me away from the rest of the group who were leaving. And within half an hour, he drove up to the place where we were in his sports car, and off we went into the Russian night to a rink just outside Moscow, in the suburbs of Moscow.
I gather he took the game up 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And he's pretty good now.
Well, that goes back to the point about him being very focused, even obsessive with anything he takes on. He said he had trouble keeping his balance growing up, and as a young adult, never was able to skate, but went back at it a couple of years ago when he was 57, 58, and is now decent skater. He can keep his balance. He never fell over, and I'd like to be able to say that of myself, and has a decent shot, and works at improving.
For those of us who follow Russian hockey for a long time, it would be good for your game if you could have Fetisov and Yakashev on your wings. Fair to say?
Absolutely. 2 of the best players ever. And yes, when you're playing 3-on-3 and those are the other 2, odds are in your favor.
You're doing okay. Okay, John, let's talk some Russian policy. And to that end, I want to start by reading an excerpt from your series that ran over the weekend, from your very lengthy piece in the Globe and Mail. In the coming days, you write, perhaps in the coming years, Mr. Putin will get to speak with his actions, whether he wants to or not. His choice will be the one of history. He can reach back to a Kremlin of old to command and control a fading empire in the hopes its decline can be arrested. Or he can lean forward into a Kremlin of new to curtail its powers at his own expense and let Russians shape their own destiny in a way that no czar, no central party, and no autocrat ever imagined. Okay, as that sets up the discussion here, what, after having spoken with him, do you see as the key policy challenges for Russia going forward?
Well, there's a number of them. Certainly on the political front, how much space is he going to give to the growing opposition, not just in Moscow but in urban centers across the country? Is he going to tolerate open dissent? Is he going to tolerate a more competitive political system? We'll see that certainly on the dissent side in the weeks ahead as protesters try to do more to agitate in the lead up to his swearing in. And more critically, we'll see it in the years ahead as to whether he allows competitive parties and challengers to him, and more importantly to his people, to have some open space, have access to the media, and be allowed to fully criticize the government in public.
Let me just follow up on that domestic agenda. The fact that, I mean, by all accounts, by accounts in your paper, they fixed this election pretty good, suggests that he's not really quite ready for opposition parties to play the role they do in democracies. Fair to say?
It would be a clear reversal of certainly of the direction he's followed for a good while. So yes, he has to do an about-face in the name of the country for its benefit. Is he progressive enough in his thinking to see that? That's what we'll see.
Did you see any indications that that could be possible?
I sense he understands that challenge. He's not ignorant to it, he's not blind to it, but he's also understands the conservative forces that he's up against, both the nationalists, who are a very serious political force in Russia and a very dominant force in the military. He's aware of that. He also has his own interests, including his economic interests that he has to protect. That will be another interesting challenge to see how he manages that. Will he further liberalize the Russian economy, get the state and therefore him out of the way so that individuals and companies, be they Russian or foreign, can come in and operate more freely than they have in the past decade?
How about Russia in the world? What's the challenge there?
Well, Syria is going to be a great test and will be an indication of where he takes foreign policy. Russia has been resistant to cooperating with the U.S. Russians say, look, we want to cooperate with the U.S. They won't play ball with us, at least not in a way that we feel good about. But he's got to move closer to where the rest of the world is on Syria or be an outlier. Does he want to be an outlier? I don't think so. I think he wants to be a respected, welcome member of the G8. He wants to be seen as a constructive world leader. But understand he was formed and still thinks a bit in a Soviet way.
He's a spy, right? He's a former spy.
He's not only a spy, he's part of a country that believes it's still kind of a superpower, not a declining power. And it doesn't understand why the world does not see and respect it as the power that Russians believe their country is.
This is a country with an aging population, some would say an antiquated military, an over-reliance on high oil prices. Given all of that, how likely does the agenda in terms of foreign policy that he wants to put forward look possible?
Oil is enormous. If oil is above $115 a barrel, maybe above 110, then things look very good for Vladimir Putin. If they go south of 110, the government, its treasury, is in all sorts of trouble. So never let that stray from the conversation. His fate, Russia's fate right now, depends very much on oil.
Did you get to talk to him about Canada much?
Yeah, he's got a number of interests with respect to Canada, and predictably the Arctic, hockey as well is a great passion of his. He wants Russia to play a significant role in the 40th anniversary celebrations of the 1972 Summit Series. Mm-hmm. He's concerned about hockey in Russia. He knows that it's part of the nation's soul. Not enough young kids are playing hockey. Not enough people are going to KHL hockey games.
That's their NHL.
That's their NHL, and it is. I don't want to say it's in decline, but it is not. It's not reached the peak that he had hoped it would as a challenger to the NHL.
The best players leave and come to play in the NHL.
Yeah,
he has that in common with Stephen Harper, though. They both love hockey, and it's really something that animates them a lot. Do we have any sense about what their relationship is like, if at all?
It's a bit distant. I understand that they've had good, long conversations together, especially around G8 and G20 meetings. There are a lot of issues that they would have common ground on. The Arctic, for instance, a shared concern with missile defense, and a shared concern with the direction of the United States, as well as NATO. But the relationship is not a warm one. It has not received a lot of attention from Canada. Putin is concerned about that. He, I suspect, would like Harper to visit Russia or, in return, be able to visit Canada.
Just to follow up on the Arctic, common ground, common interest in the Arctic, but presumably competitors for the Arctic as well.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. The next resource rush, many believe, will be in the Arctic, and Russians are up there right now trying to explore, as they say, but also mark their ground, because they know there's a lot of mineral wealth and oil wealth under the Arctic Ocean. They would like to have clearer boundaries, as everyone would, but they would like to move on a bilateral basis. They'd be happy to explore boundaries with Canada, leave the United States out of it. Many Canadians would like that as well. Raises all sorts of multilateral issues.
Indeed. Let's talk about Syria, John, because after I'm finished with you here, we're going to have a wide-ranging discussion, rather, about what's been going on in Syria over the past year. You talked about Syria during your dinner. This guy has always backed Syria, Putin, and yet he seemed to offer a sliver of a different position when he was with you. You want to explain that?
Yeah, this was remarkable. He was given the opportunity to speak in favor not only of Syria and against international intervention, but to support Assad. He distanced himself like I've never heard him from Assad. He said things like, you know, who governs Syria is up to the Syrian people. That's remarkable for a Russian leader to say. He said Syria does not enjoy a special relationship with Russia. That's extraordinary. Russia is Syria's primary backer, not only militarily, but economically. So just for Assad to wake up and hear, I don't have a special relationship with Russia, has got to be disconcerting. A lot of people thought, hey, Putin's just saying this for the Western visitors. He's trying to buy a bit of time while things sort out, and really he'll keep the channel open to Syria. I'm not convinced of that. We'll see. We'll see as over the next couple of months how much he wants to be part of the G8 leadership, how much he wants an active relationship with Obama and other G8 leaders, versus how much he wants to maintain that relationship with Syria.
Did he appear to you to walk back those kind of adventurous comments about Syria in the days after your interview?
Not directly, although people have said with his actions that that they are keeping a hand out to Assad.
What do you think was his motivation then for? I mean, I appreciate sucking up to the Western press might be part of it, but surely Vladimir Putin doesn't care that much about what the Western press does. Why would he say this?
Because he knew that as of Sunday or after Sunday, he would be president of Russia, and was thinking ahead to his next job, and wanted probably to be on the phone this week with Obama and with others in a constructive conversation, not the guy who's against us, but as someone we can reach out to. And that's critical. He wants Obama and others to reach out to him and say, help us solve Syria.
In our last minute here, let me just ask you about those elections quite finally. They fixed the elections, right? I mean, he got, in some places, more than 100% of the people voted.
Yes.
I mean, that's amazing turnout that we would love to have more, well, I'm not sure we'd love to have more than 100% of the people turning out, but more people anyway. Why does Vladimir Putin, at this stage in his life, when he's so clearly in charge of Russia, feel a need to fix an election?
That's one of the great questions. He did not, in my view, need to fix this election to win it. There are different schools of thought about this that range from his own paranoia, if I can use that word, always in fear that someone is going to try to take you down. Many believe he believes the U.S. is working to undermine him actively, so he feels he has to overcompensate for whatever forces the U.S. has throughout the country working against him. A more reasonable point of view might be that the regional commanders overachieved. They were all in a lot of hot water after the Duma elections in December for losing a critical number of seats for Putin's United Russia Party. And they had a gun to their head, maybe literally, to over-deliver in the presidential elections, and a number of them were beyond control. They had just gone out and rounded up more people than they needed to ensure the ballot boxes were stuffed with Putin votes.
Mind you, it's also accurate to say, I think, that there are demonstrations against the guy in Russia, and people boo when he shows up at hockey games. So Something's different in Russia these days.
Yes, and he knows that. This is a guy who's not received a lot of critical negative feedback in his life. I think this year or over the last 6 months, he's realized the game has changed. He knows what's going on in the Arab Spring. He pays attention to what's going on in the world. He knows he's booed at events. He sees the demonstrations. He understands Russian society is changing. Big question, does he try to crush it, or does he open up some space for that to breathe?
Thanks for that good work. That
Thank
was
you.
really a great series. Thanks so much. John Stackhouse from the Globe and Mail.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.